Now that we have everything put together, we're going to install the drivers for the USB on the flight controller. Follow the link here and go ahead and install the drivers for either Windows or Mac. Okay, now we want to open up Google in Chrome, and we're going to type in Clean Flight. We're looking for Clean Flight Configurator for Chrome, and you can get it in the Chrome Web Store. Let's go ahead and plug in the USB cable into the flight controller. It'll be right on the side. Be careful when doing this, you don't want to press too hard as that USB port can be a little bit weak on the flight controller. So now open up your device manager. We want to look for the ports, and we want to make sure that we have it in a new assigned port to our USB. And right here we see Silicon Labs COM22. So go ahead and open up Clean Flight, and on the top right hand corner we're going to find COM22 and hit connect. And if connected properly, you'll see your quad here on the screen, and if you move it, you'll actually see it moving. And on the top, we're going to hit Calibrate Accelerometer. Make sure the quadcopter is flat and perfectly still as it does this. And it'll say Finished at the top there when it's done. Now we'll move on to our Ports tab. In Ports, go to URT2 and make sure the serial RX is checked. And it'll be green if it's checked. And we'll go into our configuration here, and we see our mixer. So this is basically telling us the type of aircraft we have, which is a Quad X. So make sure Quad X is checked here. And it also shows us our motor rotation. And over here on the right, we'll see our ESC motor features. Make sure motor stop is checked, one shot is not checked, and the disarm motors is checked, and everything else will be left alone. Scroll down to the receiver mode. And we want to make sure the RX serial is selected. We're using a Spectrum type of satellite here for the receiver. And go down to Serial Receiver Provider and go ahead and select Spectrum 1024. And over to the right, we're going to have our battery voltage. Make sure VBAT is checked, and we're going to change the minimum cell voltage to 3.4 and the warning cell voltage to 3.6. Once we've done this, we can ignore everything else and we'll hit save and reboot. So once that's saved, we want to go to our Failsafe tab on the left hand side. And in stage 2, we want to make sure that this is checked. So make sure that stage 2 settings are checked. It'll turn green. And then look down in the stage 2 Failsafe procedure. We want to make sure it says land. This way, if we lose signal, the aircraft will land itself. And go ahead and save and reboot again. We'll now go to our receiver tab, and in channel map we want to select Spectrum, so drop down to the Spectrum type of receiver, and go ahead and plug in your flight battery to your quadcopter and turn on your radio, and we want to move the sticks around. Now on the left hand side we have our throttle and our yaw, so make sure that when we move that stick to the right that the yaw bar goes to the right, and we move it to the left, it goes to the left, and when we move throttle up, it goes up to the right, and when we move the throttle stick down, it goes to the left. Now if any of these are reversed, we're going to go into our radio and go ahead and reverse those channels. So we'll go into our reverse section and reverse them. Now on the right stick, we want roll to go right when we move the stick right, and left when we move the stick left. And pitch will go right when we move the stick up, and when we move the stick down, it'll go to the left. So here I've reversed the channels that need reversing, so if for some reason your direction is not going the proper way, we'll go into our radio and go ahead and reverse those channels. And we'll go ahead and go to the Modes tab now. And we're going to make the aircraft arm so it'll only be active when we flip a switch. So go ahead and add that mode. So we're going to add range under arm. We're going to move this little bar down to the left and tighten it up on this little green bar here. So we can move these little sliders and tighten this up around the green bar. And if you notice this switch here, we're going to go ahead and save that, but if you notice this switch on the top of the radio, it's your gear switch. When you move that, we want to make sure that this arm area turns green. So we're going to play with this a little bit and keep moving our switch back and forth until we get the whole arm square that's dark gray right now. We want that to highlight in green. And if it doesn't turn green right away, I would go ahead and just move the bar down a little bit and hit save again. If you don't hit save, it's not going to turn green for you. When the arm square turns green, we know that the aircraft will arm and the motors will be active. Now we want to make sure when this is armed that the switch is facing towards us. So when the arm turns green, the switch should be facing towards us, and when it's not armed, it should be away from us. It should be pushed back towards the top of the radio. Now we want to add our flight modes. So we're going to add angle and horizon. And these are basically our easy and medium flight modes. These will keep the aircraft stabilized in the air while flying. Go to our auxiliary. We want to change that to auxiliary 2 actually. And auxiliary 2 is going to be hooked up to our flap switch, our 3-position switch on the left hand side of the radio. So we want to go ahead and move these sliders again, so that when we're in mid position in our stick, we have our angle mode selected, and when we're in the all the way down position, the horizon mode is selected. So I'll go ahead and move it onto angle and hit save. Go ahead and test your switch, and it should go ahead and highlight the angle when it's in the mid position. Then go ahead and move your slider for horizon down, tighten it up a little bit, and if you have to readjust that, slide it down a little more, hit save, and now when our switch is at the bottom position, the horizon mode highlights and we know we're in horizon mode. Save again. And we'll skip a couple of these tabs and we'll go down to motors. It's very, very important you do this with the props removed from the aircraft. So far we have not put the props on. We're going to go ahead and check that we agree that to turn the motors on. And now we have individual control of each motor. So by placing a small piece of paper on the motor and just poking the shaft of the motor through the piece of paper, and you can use each one of these sliders to turn the motor on, and we can now see which way the paper is rotating on the shaft of the motor. Now if these are not rotating properly, if they're the wrong direction, and use this little area at the top that you see under the motors here with the motor rotation, go ahead and reverse the motor direction by just changing 2 of the bullet connectors that attach the speed controllers to the motor. So just swap those 2 out and recheck it. And now we're going to do a motor calibration. So turn your radio off and unplug your flight battery. Go ahead and agree to making the motors live and turn your master all the way up, and you'll hear a series of tones on the speed controllers and motors. Once those tones are done, after a few seconds, slide the master down. You'll hear a few more tones, and go ahead and uncheck the live motor there, and we're good to go. Go back to your setup just to calibrate the accelerometer one more time. And once that's finished, we can hit disconnect and we are ready to put the props on and fly. Okay, so let's just tidy up some of these zip ties. Now that we know that the speed controllers are in the correct place and the motors are spinning in the correct orientation, we can go ahead and tighten them up and then take some clippers and just trim off the extra piece of zip tie there. Now let's take our receiver and we're going to attach some double-sided tape onto the bottom, just a small square. And we're going to take the 2 antennas and place them into the antenna tubes inside of the canopy and up out the back. And then press firmly on the satellite receiver to attach it to the canopy. Now we want to go to the flight controller, and there's the 2 pins where we have the VBAC connection and the buzzer. We want to actually bend those in. and this will just allow us a little bit more clearance for the canopy to fit. So you see here we bent them in at about a 45-degree angle. Now let's take the 2 remaining small black screws from hardware bag 3 and place the canopy on the main frame. We want to make sure we tuck in all the wires and don't get any caught between the main frame and the canopy. And then go ahead and screw the 2 screws through the top of the canopy holes into the threaded inserts on the main frame. Again, make sure you don't get any wires caught between the canopy and the main frame itself. You can even use the hex wrench to kind of push them back inside the canopy. Let's locate our prop nuts, and we'll go ahead and kind of place them where they need to go on each motor. So we have the silver ones on motor 2 and 3, and the black ones on motor 1 and 4. And we'll get out some of our props, and I like to put 2 different colors of props on, 2 of the same color for the back of the aircraft and 2 of the same color for the front, and this just again helps with orientation when you're flying. So on top of the props, we want to make sure that the letters or the numbers are facing up towards the sky, so the motor side will be completely blank on the prop and the letters will be on the top. We want to make sure that we put the numbers that have the R after it on motors 1 and 4, and the propellers that do not have an R on the writing on number 2 and 3. Go ahead and put the prop nuts on the correct motors. Now remember, these have to go on a certain motor or else they will not screw on correctly. And you can just hand tighten them for now. And once we have all these hand tightened, we'll go ahead and use a wrench just to make them a little bit more snug. We don't want to over tighten these because you can actually break your props or actually squish them enough to where the prop will bow a little bit in flight, and we don't want that. We just want to tighten them enough to where they won't loosen up on us. And once you've done that, we are ready to fly the quadcopter. My name's Tyler Caros with Airwolf 3D. Thanks again for watching.